Good morning, everybody. And it's so great to be here. Thank you so much. I definitely need the water. Coming in this morning, it's been a while since I've spoken at church. But when the protocol were inviting me in, I was like, I remember when I did this job. In fact, there's no department that I've not worked before because my dad was a pastor, so I was always just shifting from Sunday school to other departments. But it's been a while since I've spoken, so it's great to be here, and it's great to be speaking on one of my favorite topics, which is innovation. So a bit about me. I run a venture capital firm now, which is like a bank. Your Nigerian banks take money from you and give it to Dangote. I also take money from my customers, which are institutions, but I give it to people that are poorer than Dangote, people that are just starting up. And I invest that money primarily in health tech and financial services or fintech. So that's what I do for a living. Formerly, before I started doing this, I founded an emergency services company called Flying Doctors. So that's a bit about me. But I'm going to go on to innovating our way into the future. And I had to change my slides when I realized I was going to be the first speaker, because I just want to set the context around innovation and what innovation means for our nation and how we can become more innovative as a country. So why innovation matters. This is one of my favorite Harvard professors. His name is Professor Hausman, and he's looked at development. And one of the things that he found about innovation is that for a country to develop, for people to get rich, they need to innovate and they need to make things. So if your country is not rich, it means that you're not making things, you're not innovating. And he gives a really famous talk, which you can find on YouTube, where he looks at two countries in 1962. He looks at Thailand and he looks at Ghana. And all the forecasters thought that Ghana was going to be a lot more successful than Thailand. Why did they think that? Because Ghana was investing in education in 1962. Ghana was closer to the European market, closer to the American market compared to Thailand. And also Ghanaians spoke English, which is a big deal if you're wanting to do international business. So as at 1962, everybody forecast that obviously Ghana was going to do better than Thailand. Fast forward to where we are now. Thailand is one of the top 20 exporters in the entire world. And their economy is doing well and it's growing. Ghana is more or less bankrupt. They've defaulted on all of their debt. And I'm sure some people invested, or your institutions invested in that debt. We've not seen our money that we borrowed to Ghana. And it's fallen into confusion. And they don't export that much at all. So you can see a tale of two countries, one that decided to make things and innovate, and one that could not. And that's really why innovation matters. It matters on an individual level that we innovate to grow personal wealth, but that personal wealth actually translates into national wealth. Nigeria has the highest number of people living in poverty in the entire world. In the entire world, there's no country that has as many poor people as us. So in order to change lives, in order to create jobs, I believe that it's our mission as children of God to innovate, and innovate with excellence. Because the Bible is full of people that were able to innovate. Joseph was able to innovate in government. Don't forget, he was the one that brought about the tax system in Egypt. He was the one that innovated through the recession that they had. He was the one that came up with all of the things that kept the country afloat. The Bible is full of examples of excellence in innovation, and I believe that we should be leading that charge in Nigeria for a higher purpose. So I'm going to talk about 5 things that will help us innovate our way into the future. And I'm going to, again, because I'm setting the context, do this on a macro level. So it might not apply directly to you, but at least there's some things to think about. So number 1, working with government. Now, when I talk about working in the government, especially the Nigerian government, I hear, the government is corrupt. If I go there, I'll be slowed down. The people that work there are not intelligent. And the sort of sentiment is not very positive. But if you look at countries like China, 80% of their stock exchange is state-owned companies. Upon all, we're talking about the private sector. The most profitable company in the world is a state-owned company. Saudi Aramco is the most profitable company in the world, and is run by government. Almost 50% of both the Brazilian and the Russian stock exchange is government. And the truth is, it's because they have state capacity. But you cannot have state capacity without people of capacity working for the state. So I'd like to invite us to think about it. Because if we all say we are too smart to work in government, then who is going to be there? And I'd like to share a quote on this point, what I'm going to finish with. It's by Professor Jeffrey Pfeffer from Stanford University. And he says that we always complain, even in America, they complain about bad people in government. But he says that if we want more instances of power being used for good, then more good people need to be willing and able to use power. And I believe that it starts from here, because I believe that we're people of excellence. I believe that we're people with a mission. So that's my first point around innovation. Don't forget that 85% of new drug molecules were developed by the American government. Let's not forget that Tesla, Google, Facebook, they've all collected government grants at some stage. Even the internet that you are using on your phone for WhatsApp, for Facebook, for Linda Ikeji's blog, to read your Bible, it was a government project. The internet was invented by government. So remember what I said, you cannot have state capacity without people of capacity working in the states. Number two, innovation, collaborating with government. So I've never worked with government before, but I do run a venture capital firm, and I work voluntarily for the NESG, which is the Nigerian Economic Summit Group. I work for the Nigerian American Chamber of Commerce. I work for the British Business Group. I work for Women in Finance Nigeria on their ESCO. And what do? We write policy. I've authored 4 books on policy. I've written over 30 papers on policy to submit to government. Because most politicians leave school, and what do? They go into government. They've never even run a CS spot before. So if private sector people are not saying, this is what we need, you expect them to, where are they going to get the ideas from? So if we're not collaborating and being people of influence, then I'm not sure we're going to be able to innovate. One of the things on the slides that I just saw was even the Moderna vaccine that we all took, the mRNA, it was still on the back of an American government grant. There are some things that private sector cannot do. They can't go and put money into something that has not been proven, that they don't know where the money is going to come back. But the government does that stuff. So even if we can't do number 1, let's think about number 2. The third thing that we need for innovation is education. And I think that we've gotten it into our heads that great companies are started by school dropouts and people that don't know much. Yes, the media might tell us that, but actually, 95% of people that have started a billion-dollar company had a BSc. Almost 50% of people that have started a billion-dollar company had a master's. So for the people that are working in government listening, we need to invest more in education. We're not going to become an innovative country with the highest number of out-of-school children in the world. And for the private sector people listening, education is important. And I'm not even talking about just formal degrees. I'm talking about continuous learning, taking courses, learning about finance, learning more deeply about what your area of expertise is. And remembering that it's never too late. It sounds like the average age of a billion-dollar tech founder is 22, but that's not true. The average age of a successful founder in the innovation space is actually 45. So remember, there's always time to start an innovative business. Obviously, I have a bias towards healthcare, so I'm going to talk about healthcare. I don't think Nigeria can become productive without healthcare. I think healthcare creates more jobs than any other sector. 1 in 13 Americans works in a hospital. The UK NHS is the biggest employer in the whole of Europe, the 6th biggest employer in the world. So I think there's a big link between healthcare and productivity. So when you're thinking about your innovative ventures, think about healthcare. Oh, and I'm going to talk about discipline. I'm going to keep it on this slide for a while because I'm going to talk about Solomon. Solomon was the wisest man that ever existed. God said that, Solomon, I'm going to give you this thing, and it was given. Somehow life is not balanced because the same blessing that Jacob had to fight all night for and even injure his hip was the same blessing that God just said, because of where you were born or who you were born to, you are going to get this gift, free of charge. You're going to be the wisest person. But how did his life end up? It went so badly for him that there was a time that God said that I'm going to divert the ancestry of Jesus. You are no longer going to be involved. He ended up with a completely ruined legacy. So how does somebody with that amount of wisdom end up in that situation? And it tells us that wisdom is not enough. Nigerians are very, very clever people, very intelligent people. But it has to be wisdom combined with discipline. And discipline is the ability to do things that we don't really want to do. There's this video that went viral, and it said, don't worry about my future. That is enjoyment now. I'd like to invite us all to start maybe worrying about our future a little bit and maybe defer that enjoyment. Why? So, next slide. So, I always hear that Nigeria is not an enabling environment. We can't succeed in Nigeria because, it's just a bad place. But when we japa, look at what happens. The Indians earn $140,000 per year when they move to America, on average, as immigrants. The Pakistanis, that are on the same level as Nigeria, in fact, they earn $120,000 per year. When the Chinese move from China, it's not an enabling environment, to America, they earn $100,000 per year. Even Ghana, that I was abusing earlier, that they are bankrupt and they have not paid their debts, they still earn $80,000 a year when they japa. Nigerians, when we move, we only earn $79,000. It's only Somalians that earn less than us, and that's because their country is at war. So we are very, very brilliant. But actually, an Indian that moves, the average Indian that moves, earns double what we earn, even when we're in an enabling environment. So it tells us, because all of these people, the Indians, the Pakistanis, they're running away from the same problem, right? Lack of opportunity. On an environment that is not enabling. On some measures, Pakistan is even worse than Nigeria. But when they get there, they're able to hustle more than us. So what more can we say about discipline? And what are the dimensions of discipline that I'm going to talk about today? I think the number one mistake around discipline is, if Pastor Koju had invited any Nigerian billionaire here, probably the first thing they would have said is follow your passion. And I never say that. And I don't even take them seriously. Because the richest men in this country make cement and pasta and rice and tomatoes. But they'll tell you to go and do fine arts. I feel like there needs to be a balance between following your passion and doing things that make money. Probably the biggest project in Nigeria today. The biggest project in Nigeria today, in terms of what's going to probably propel our richest man into the league of global billionaires, isn't really a passion project. It's making PMS petrol. Like, it's just something that there's demand for and it's going to make money. It's not a passion, really. But nobody's passionate about petrol. It smells. You can't drink it. But it's something that there's a huge demand for. I'm not saying with a lot of the richest men in the world, they do pretty boring things. In fact, if you look at the top percentage of Americans, 0.5%, that earn over $1 million a year, all their businesses are boring. They sell cars. They sell coffee makers. Extremely boring businesses. So I think it's about finding a balance. Don't be disciplined, and you've got to look at the kind of business aspiration you want, and then try and measure it with what you're actually doing and see if that type of business can get you there. But all in all, following your passion without thinking about the kind of lifestyle you want, I think is incredibly bad advice. The second thing that I would say is around our networks. And I defined discipline on that slide as doing things that you normally wouldn't want to do, but you have to do to get a certain result. So I can remember when I hired somebody, and he said, oh, but Dr. Ola, you like traveling. I said, I hate traveling. He said, but you travel all the time. I said, does that mean I like it? So I started to realize that people actually only do things that they like, and they don't do things that they don't like. And one of the most interesting things is around weak ties and strong ties. So there's good evidence that people that you don't really know are the people that are going to help you most in your career. It's not going to be your mom or your dad. It's not going to be your family member. It's not going to be your best friend. It's going to be somebody that you don't know, your weak ties. And you can read about this. There's a very good article in the Harvard Business Review called The Strength of Weak Ties. So you want to hang out with people that are closest to you, but those are not the most likely people to give you business success. So also, I think, number one, don't follow your passion. Number two, or don't follow your passion blindly, but number two, also try and build on those weak ties. Pastor Koju spoke about luck, and I think there's two types of luck. There's blind luck. Like there's this thing on Twitter, that Mark Zuckerberg's new baby, they say that he's always smiling. He's always smiling because he can't believe that it was this type of home that he was born into. So the baby is always smiling like, wow, my dad is Mark Zuckerberg. Somebody even said that, being born in Africa is such a disadvantage. Even Jesus did not choose to be born here. He still chose to be born in somewhere a little bit civilized. So there's that blind luck of, just being born into a great family, right? But there's also smart luck, which is a lot harder. And that requires a lot of discipline. If you're that Mark Zuckerberg's baby, then you've had blind luck. You didn't choose it. You just ended up there, and you're smiling all the way. That baby is always smiling. But, if you're looking for smart luck, then it takes a lot of discipline, and it takes a lot of really doing what you don't want to do on a daily basis. Doing a lot of what you don't really like doing, because there's a lot of things about my job that I don't like, but I have to do to get the result. So, smart luck versus blind luck. And the final point I want to make is around employment and risk. Hard work is a risk. Whether you're doing it in a job or whether you're doing it in entrepreneurship, the risk is not entrepreneurship. It's actually working hard, because it might not pay off. There's always that risk. And that's why people don't do it. If it was guaranteed that if you work hard for 5 years, I'm sure more people would do it. But people don't like the fact that this thing is not, people hate uncertainty. And that's why I believe strongly in employment, because I believe that at least you can innovate inside a company and still have better results than most people that are entrepreneuring all around. I always say that probably 99% of entrepreneurs in Nigeria don't make as much as a GM in a bank. And you're not worried when you're in a bank. You're actually doing your job, you're gaining skills, and you're innovating. But you're innovating in a comfortable place where you're not worrying about excessive risk. So I think one of the pieces of advice about entrepreneurship is remember that you can, or innovation is remember that you can innovate from within a company. And if you want a certain type of lifestyle, then it might be better that you innovate within a company, because outside a company, you might not be able to achieve that lifestyle that you want to have in terms of balance. Because every time you pursue that smart luck, you're sacrificing some balance for it. And that's where I'll end, around balance. Because this is about innovating our way into the future. This is about being people of the kingdom, people, Christians, leading, showing that excellence, standing out, like Joseph did, as people that are excellent at what we do. Technically, it wasn't even about Joseph being a Christian. It was about the standard of his work. And the standard of his work spoke volumes. The Bible says that when we're talking about Daniel, that he had an excellent spirit. That work, what he was able to do, stood out. And that's what I really, really want for the church. I don't want mediocrity. I want us to be able to stand out for excellence, because that's the best form of evangelism there is. But that said, like I said, the more you pursue your career, the more you pursue your businesses, the less balance you have in your life. And to be vulnerable with you, obviously I've sacrificed stuff, a lot of things in my personal life to get where I am, and you might not be willing to make those sacrifices, and that's okay. Because at the end of the day, Jeff Bezos, Bill Gates, Elon Musk, they're the richest men in the world, but they're all divorced. All three. And if you think about even the richest men here, you know, their personal lives sometimes are a bit wonky. So we really have to think about that balance while we're innovating. So what have I spoken about in summary? The US is richer than Nigeria because they make things, because they innovate. And there's 5 things that I think are important for developing that culture of innovation here in Nigeria. Going into government, collaborating with government, investing in education, both on a public sector level and on a private sector level, investing in healthcare, because I obviously have a bias, and discipline. Discipline, that ability to do things that you don't want to do. Thank you very much.